As we've been discussing, Donald Trump's approval rating has plummeted, and unfortunately for elected MAGA Republicans who are much more politically vulnerable than Trump ever was, they are now facing very real public backlash, which could determine control of Congress in 2026. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we got a poll to look at, got an article to examine, but before I do any of that, I actually want to treat you to this video from Rachel Maddow because she really unpacks it with back-to-back clips of multiple elected Republicans throughout the country facing very public backlash for their support of an increasingly unpopular and unaccountable Donald Trump.
Today in Asheville, North Carolina, people showed up to protest the Trump administration's firing of federal workers. They got a big crowd in Asheville at the federal courthouse there. We're also seeing more people show up at town halls to question their members of Congress. Last night, we showed you part of a town hall that was held in Roswell, Georgia by Republican Congressman Rich McCormick. I want you to see a little bit more from that. Watch this.
Workers from the nuclear workers, the NNSA, our nuclear stockpile, and CDC workers working on the bird flu being fired by DOGE and then having to be rehired when someone realizes, oh gosh, we need those people. Why is a supposedly conservative party taking such a radical and extremist and sloppy approach to this?
You have to do more with less in order to survive.
I understand. Trying to do more with less. That's reasonable. What's not reasonable is taking this chainsaw approach, which they obviously admit when they fired these people and then decided, oh, we fired the wrong people. We got to bring them back in. Why is this being jammed down the pipe so rushed and sloppily?
So,
Crowd goes wild. So that was Roswell, Georgia last night. This was a telephone town hall. Also last night, this was Republican Congresswoman Stephanie Bice of Oklahoma.
I'm a registered Republican voter and retired active Army officer. How can you tell me that DOGE, with some college whiz kids from a computer terminal in Washington, D.C., without even getting out into the field, after about a week or maybe two, has determined that it's okay to cut veterans' benefits?
I think a couple things. Let me give you an example. Did you know that the VA was in charge of payments for illegals for housing? Basically, the VA.
No, I'd like for you to send me. Could you send me that reference so I could research that? Because no, I'm not aware of that. And I would tell you that that's a red herring, a false flag. If you're throwing that kind of political stuff up, trying to cut veterans' benefits, that's very alarming to me.
A registered Republican voter, retired active Army officer. That is the kind of reaction these members are facing, even from Republican voters in Republican districts. This was the scene in West Bend, Wisconsin, with Republican Congressman Scott Fitzgerald. Watch.
When will you stand up to them and say that is enough?
The end result of the fraud and abuse that has been discovered already.
Look at his face. I'm sorry to interrupt, but look at his face. That is the look of a man who was not expecting this and probably will never conduct a town hall again, which, by the way, that should be constitutionally mandated. The idea that you can run for office, be elected by your representative or by the people, and not interface with them, not engage them, hide from them until next election is absurd. But again, just look at the palpable fear and confusion on this man's face.
No proof.
That is a congressman coming to terms with his constituents. West Bend, Wisconsin. About an hour.
So, oh, there's one more. I forgot this one. This is Grothman.
Away in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, another Republican Congressman, Glenn Grothman, also getting an earful.
President Trump has issued a lot of executive orders. I think by and large this is moving very quickly compared to other administrations, and I think across the board he's done some very good things. I think He's gotten rid of birthright citizenship.
Illegal as hell.
Yeah. I don't even know why you would. I'm so confused by what Grothman had to say there. He got rid of birthright citizenship. Number one, that's a terrible idea. Number two, he hasn't, because number three, it's unconstitutional and it's been challenged in court. And again, it's so sad at how little Trump has actually accomplished that that's the first thing that this elected Republican reached for. Well, he succeeded in doing this really cruel, illegal, unconstitutional thing. That's his success. Well, it's really cruel. It's gross that you would reach for that. He didn't do it because it was challenged by the courts, because three, it very clearly violates the 14th Amendment, the plain text of the 14th Amendment. I love this. I love this. Again, I suspect that what we'll see is more MAGA Republicans be very tactical about when, where, and how they conduct town halls, or they may retreat from them wholesale. But the first example, which was Congressman Rich McCormick in Georgia, his was by far the most viral. This is a MAGA Republican who recently told CNN that he felt that rather than subsidize through state or federal government food for school children, those school children should just go get a job and pay for their own lunches while going to school. That's really pathetic and gross and disgusting, and also indicative of the modern GOP's increasing war against, child labor laws, right? And he, in this town hall, he actually, what I meant was, if you want to go on a date, when you're like a teenager, maybe get a job, get some extra cash so you can take your partner, your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, on a date. Well, no, that's not what you said. You were talking about school lunches when that clip went viral. But the bottom line is this. That was a sustained clip. We read the article from the Atlantic Journal-Constitution, the AJC, which I think is the biggest newspaper in Georgia. And this article by Greg Bluestein is just brutal, and just it includes clip after clip after clip after clip of his own constituents reading him the riot act for his lack of meaningful pushback on the Trump administration's excesses and the lack of demands for accountability from Elon Musk. And this actually is inspiring, because this should unite people on both sides of the aisle, wherever you are. Again, I go to my example is, what if the shoe were on the other foot? What if it were a Democratic president with a liberal billionaire? If you wouldn't be comfortable with that, then if you're a morally consistent and principled person, you shouldn't be okay with this either. Unfortunately, so many Trump supporters just don't care. It's about a specific outcome. It's about owning the libs, and so they'll say one thing and do another and be very hypocritical in their principles. But we're seeing proof that these Republicans are facing the wrath of their voters, saying, no, we expect more from you, not to abdicate your power under Article 1. We expect you to not capitulate, to not simply roll over for Donald Trump, because here's a reminder. Civics 101. Congress doesn't work for the president. The president is, yes, by far the most powerful person in the federal government, and should be. But Congress, Congress people and senators, they're in a separate branch. They're not employees. They're not like cabinet secretaries. They don't work for the president. And unfortunately, MAGA Republicans have this very cultish hierarchical view that Donald Trump should be able to give them orders. And it's really gross. And it's not just these instances, these viral instances of town halls going really poorly for MAGA Republicans. We also have some polling. So from one of Donald Trump's own pet pollsters, some pretty bad news. A majority of voters in swing districts are worried about their financial situation. The Republican tax giveaways for the wealthy and their health care cuts are unpopular. And Democrats lead on the House generic ballot. They lead Republicans despite their own unpopularity. Democrats have their own popularity issues, but they currently lead Republicans by 5 percentage points. That's not good for the GOP. New Republic breaks it down more. As you watch Donald Trump and Elon Musk recklessly attempt to destroy the federal government like a pair of toddlers picking legs off a spider, it seems as if Republicans have decided public opinion no longer constrains them in the least. Polls are already demonstrating public dissatisfaction with Trump-Musk's autocratic overreach and top agenda items, yet they have only intensified their assault, and GOP lawmakers who have dared air their concerns have done so only in the meekest of terms. That's why a new memo from the top pollster on Trump's 2024 campaign is so intriguing. It finds that sizable majorities in competitive House districts are still unhappy about their economic predicament. Read carefully, it also gently warns Republicans that some Trump priorities they're about to enact could prove unpopular in these districts, though it avoids saying this directly, perhaps to avoid angering the audience of one, that being Trump. The memo suggests that some Republicans at least do think public opinion matters, and that maybe, just maybe, they do fear being held accountable in future elections, like, for instance, next year's midterms. The memo's key findings are that 59% of voters in 18 swing districts are, quote, worried about their personal financial situation, and that Democrats are leading in the House generic ballot matchup by 5 points. As the memo delicately notes, quote, Republicans have to play catch-up. Trump's approval in these districts is 47-49, 2 points underwater. All of that adds up to bad news, especially coming from pollster Tony Fabrizio, a chief architect of Trump's 2024 victory. Indeed, according to Politico, which first reported on the memo, vulnerable Republicans are taking it very seriously. So let's take a look at that. Doge bites Republicans. Good pun there. Let's see this particular memo. Okay, yeah. As Elon Musk brandished a chainsaw on stage at CPAC yesterday, it wasn't just those with front row seats running for cover. A number of congressional Republicans are starting to flee the blowback of his Department of Government Efficiency's slash and burn approach to federal budget cuts, driven by growing evidence of a groundswell of concern among groups of ordinary voters. And if you think this is only a dynamic and moderate swing states, consider this morning's newsletter a wake-up call. In an R+18 district, speaking at a business luncheon yesterday in Westerville, Ohio, GOP Representative Troy Balderson, again, we saw that clip, got a lot of pushback. In Deep Red, Georgia, they talk about Rich McCormick, an overflow crowd packed into a town hall for him. Like, so many people wanted to confront this guy that they basically exceeded the permissible, attendance of what that building could hold. Attendees set the tone early, with one accusing McCormick of doing us a disservice for supporting the budget slashing initiatives by Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency. He was booed to hell and back. As the playbook's resident geriatric millennial, your author's mind immediately flashed back to the raucous town hall forums that preceded the 2010 midterm wave election, when an angry and energized electorate propelled Republicans to victory and smashed through Democratic control of Congress. Only this time, the parties would be reversed. So, this is bad news for MAGA Republicans, and it's the Democrats, elected Democrats in particular, but quite frankly, the rest of us who either vote Democrat or recognize that the Democratic Party is better than the alternative. We all have a part to play in relentlessly hammering this. Again, one of my chief fears is that I feel Democrats and people on the left feel that facts speak for themselves, and if you just articulate a thing or if a thing is demonstrated, then you can just like swipe your hands and be done with it. No, we have to keep the pressure up relentlessly every damn day between now and the election to keep this momentum up. And hopefully what we will see is a 2010 blowout, or perhaps even greater, but in our favor. And we will desperately need that if we have any hope of checking Donald Trump. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.